but at least some knowledge about this framework should be there. Not necessarily safe, but any kind of scaling framework. You should know about different way of approaching agile and also a little bit about scaling. So that's a prerequisite I would consider for ICP-ACC. Right. Moving on to the next question. We have, this says, what is the relevance of coaching certification as compared to coaching experience with getting a job? Okay. So it's a similar question to the prerequisites part, or sorry, the experience versus certification part. I find this question a little confusing because it talks about getting a job as a consultant, right? I'm not sure why you need coaching certification or experience for a consultant job, but I'm assuming you're talking about agile consultant who, and many people see agile consultant, agile coach as two similar kind of terms. If this was agile coach, this word, then I would say coaching certificate, any kind of certificate improves your probability of getting shortlisted for that interview, right? But in the interview, of course, having the relevant experience is going to be much, much more important. You need to have theoretical knowledge, yes, but experience is going to be very important. So both are important to get a job as an agile coach. Next, what is the content or how is the content different as per latest curriculum of ICP-ACC? Yes, ICP-ACC revised the curriculum last year, about 1.5 years back. And the content was not like overhauled. It was 80% same, some 10-20% changes were there, not significant changes. And as I told you before, go to IC Agile's website, go to this page which talks about agile coaching, and then look at the learning outcomes. You will get a PDF which has details of what is covered in this training. Right. Moving on, what are agile transformations and digital transformations? Okay. More important than that, I'll answer this question. What additional things Agile Coach do than Scrum Masters? As I mentioned before, Scrum Masters are also team coaches. They are some sort of Agile coaches. But the way the industry sees them is Scrum Master is somebody who's a team coach for one or two teams. An Agile coach is somebody who coaches multiple teams. And usually whenever you are coaching teams, multiple teams as an agile coach, you would also have a scrum master or some team level coach within the teams. And scrum master's role is more of a permanent kind of role, where the scrum master will be with the team. It's not a temporary role. Agile coach role is seen more as a temporary role, agile coach role. Once you have helped the team transition to agile, you may move on to other teams or maybe a different organizations. Yeah. Now, what are agile transformation and digital transformations? It's a broad question. Simply agile transformation is whenever you are helping multiple teams at scale, help them to agile, it's called agile transformation. If it's one team or 2-3 teams, you will not call agile transformation. It's more at an organization level. And digital transformation is more, you can say, similar kind of concept, but it has some technical practices being adopted. For example, DevOps or some kind of some of the technical practices could also be there. Agile transformation is more about the process as such. Importance of an agile coach among senior manager, program, project delivery manager. Now, it's difficult for me to give a concrete answer or definite answer because it depends on what is the understanding of the organization. If they need agile coach, the agile coach is not usually part of the hierarchy, especially if the agile coach is coming from somewhere outside, right? you would have senior manager, program manager, project manager, all these guys as a part of the hierarchy. Agile coach stands on in parallel to the hierarchy and helps uh, the entire hierarchy transition to agile, right? In some cases where companies look for internal agile coaches, they may ask a program manager, a project manager, a delivery manager, a senior manager to play that role, right? So it's not necessarily either or. It's more about what value you're expecting from agile coach, right? And in one of the question very soon I'll talk about what is the expectation, typical expectation from agile coach. Yeah. So let me take this question a little bit early. As an agile coach, what is the topmost or foremost responsibility to the team and the organization, right? Uh, Different companies have different understanding of agile and also coaching, and that's why the confusion about what would an agile coach do. So I'll try to share a simple concept that I have. Seema, can you see the screen?
No, Sanjay.
The PowerPoint screen, can you see?
Not yet.
No?
Yes, I can see the PowerPoint, the 5 dimension of
5 dimensions of
ability.
thinkability.
Yeah,
Okay,
I can see
great.
that.
All right, so see, agile or any process should not be adopted just because everybody else is doing it. So I strongly believe that a company, a team, an organization should adopt a process because it will help them in any way. And if you look at a team from outside, and if you want to adopt a process that will help the team, improve, the different dimensions that you may want to look at. First, of course, most common is productivity. A process that helps team improve their productivity is a good process. The second dimension is business value delivery. Now, productivity and business value delivery, the slight difference is productivity tells you how much work is being finished in a time period, and business value delivery tells you how much value has been generated. Now, if you look at a team that has done 25 story points in sprint 1 and 25 story points in sprint 2, where one story point being a rough measure of the size of work, you might roughly say that the team has similar productivity in both the sprints. But you cannot say that team has produced the same business value. The business value delivery depends more on what items are picked up. In some cases where the team is either picking up items based on their comfort, what is easy for them, or the product owner is not giving items in a prioritized manner to the team. In both cases, the productivity might be decent, good, but business value delivery may be compromised. So that's a subtle difference between business value delivery and productivity. The third dimension is quality. Quality in terms of the quality of the code or what kind of solution you are generating. Then it is turnaround time, how fast you're finishing things. It has two dimensions. One is at the item level, how fast you are finishing individual items, the cycle time or lead time. And the other is how frequently are you releasing things to production, which is the release frequency. And the fifth dimension is self-organizing culture. Is the team doing all these things? If is the team maintaining good productivity, business value delivery, quality and turnaround time on their own, or they need a push from manager? That is the key difference between self-organizing culture or maybe a manager-driven kind of culture, right? Now, coming back to the question of as an agile coach, what is the topmost or foremost responsibility to the team and the organization? So I believe that you should be able to help the organization and the team improve on all these 5 dimensions. Which dimension to focus on, that will depend on the initial conversation you will have with the management. So I normally ask, show this list to the management and ask them, given your current situation, given your current circumstances, what would you like to focus on for the next 3 to 6 months or maybe 1 year? What is your concern? Is your concern quality, turnaround time, business value delivery, self-organizing culture, or something else? And if you pick any two organizations, their focus will also be different, right? Some team might be, or some organization might be happy with the productivity, but their concern could be the quality of code, or maybe the release frequency needs to be shorter. Rather than 6 months, we need to transition to 3 months or to 1 month. So back to the question, how you would help as an agile coach? You would help organization achieve the goals which are relevant for them. So the goals will be decided by them, and you'll help them, decide those goals, and you will then help them execute while you're interacting with all those teams, right? And the similar is the answer for this question 5, which is importance of an agile coach among senior manager, program, project delivery manager. So you are helping them transition to a new process, changing the culture in terms of how team members interact, how decisions get made. And in that effort, many times you'll also be mentoring some of these roles, right? All right, let's move on to a big question. And this question is shared by Oni Krishnan from Berlin. Thanks, Oni, for sharing this question, because it looks like a real life question. Let's see what challenge we have. So Oni has a team which has a sprint duration of 2 weeks and a velocity of 70 story points. Team capacity is 600 hours per sprint after deducting all the meeting hours and focus factor, etc. Team does the story sizing estimation in story points, and each story time, task time in hours. Okay. Every time at the time of capacity planning, team takes 70 points worth of stories as per sprint goal. However, when they divide those stories into tasks and estimate them in hours, they have used only 30 to 40% of team capacity, which is 200 to 250 hours out of 600 hours. What are the possible causes, do you think, for this situation? So I may not be able to tell you the causes why this is happening, but I'll give you my ideas about what needs to be done. So first, let's do a little bit of math. I think the 600 is coming from possibly 10 days of sprint multiplied by 10 members, and each day equal to maybe 6 hours, 6 productive hours per day, right? That's equal to 600 person hours. Now I'll try to change the formula a little bit. Instead of 10 days, I'll make it 9 days, because in a 2-week sprint, 1 day is used for the sprint planning, which is roughly 2 to 4 hours on day 1, and the sprint review and retrospective, that again could be about 4 hours or more on the last day. So I'll make it 9 days, 10 members, 6 hours. So that makes it 540. I'm assuming Oni, who shared this question, he has a 10-member team, and all these 10 members are development team members, including testers and developers. Now 540 is the team's capacity in a sprint, and they have tasks worth 200 to 250. So it looks like they're, let's make it 250 hours. So their utilization here for how much of loading we are doing is about 45% to 50%. Right. Now, what's wrong here? Let me ask people, everyone, and I'll look into the chat box. Where's the chat box? Kumkum, where do I see chat? I see Q&A. I don't see the chat box. Okay, I see it now. Okay. Can people quickly type one thing that you feel is wrong here? Overestimation. Story points are not equal to hours. We use only 8 as per other ceremonies. Okay, converting story point to hours. Okay, any other ideas on what could be wrong? Okay, it's a very broad statement. Team may not be self-organized. Overestimation and not proper planning. Not proper planning, yeah, it looks like, but overestimation, I don't know. Approx we do one story point as 1 day of work. Please don't do it. Velocity is assumed to be 70. Okay, team does not want to overcommit as they are not clear on requirements. Fixed story point not necessary. One story point is not just 3 hours, so it's not saying 3 hours, it's equal to 3 hours. Story points are equal to hours. Again, it's not mentioned here. Need to figure out what is actual value delivery rather than just focusing on tasks being done. Dependency has not been identified. Team not aware of how to estimate properly. Okay. Utilization is just around 50%. All right. So let me share my thoughts. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. And last one is improper estimation. So I would not necessarily say it's improper estimation. I'll give them the benefit of doubt. Now, you're right that there might be a possibility that the team has inflated the story points. So the same 70 story points could be done in with 30 to 40% of capacity rather than 70 to 80% of capacity. Now, the biggest problem I see here is an assumption that your current target in this sprint should be equal to your past velocity. We are assuming that the past velocity, which is 70 story points, is the ceiling for us as a team. Nowhere in any documentation in Agile, whether you look at Scrum Guide or some other place, it says you should pull amount of work based on your average velocity. No, average velocity is only a guidance, right? So your first rough guidance is velocity. And I'm using the word rough, that's very important. It's a rough guidance, right, on how much can be done in a sprint. Now, this rough guidance is important. If management comes to you, customer comes to you, or product owner comes to you and asks you how much work can be done in 3 months. There you look at your average velocity and multiply it by whatever number of sprints you have and may make a statement like, we might be able to. That's a forecast, that's not a commitment. You might say that we might be able to do this much work in the next 6 or 8 sprints. It's used only for projection. Projection or forecasting, right? That's one important point. Now, velocity is a rough guidance. So you enter the sprint planning thinking that we might be able to do roughly equal to or more than your previous velocity. When you get into the sprint, you pick story one after the other in order of prioritization, highest priority story first, and you start planning. At that point, your story points do not matter. If a story is 8 point, 5 point, 3 point, it doesn't matter. You look at the story, the team discusses how to approach, and you plan stories one by one. Okay? You break them into tasks, you assign the task, all that is happening here, which is fine. And you keep on doing this, planning stories one by one until 70 to 80% of the capacity is utilized. You don't plan for 100%, you don't plan for 30-40%. Right? That's the key thing here. So velocity is just a rough projection, rough rules used for rough forecasting. How much work a team pulls, that depends on how much capacity they have, right? I don't know, but maybe this team was 8-member team sometime back, now it's 10-member, or maybe they have become more efficient in doing the same stories, better, faster, or maybe they're inflating the points, I don't know. But in this case, as a coach, as a Scrum Master, my focus will be, okay, we have utilized 30 to 40% of team capacity, let's pull more. right? Or ask the team what's wrong in pulling more if they show any resistance, right? Because 70 story point is your past, your history. You don't want to decide your future based on your past. Otherwise, you will never improve as a team, right? So you plan story one by one until 70 to 80% of the capacity is utilized. You reserve 20 to 30% of the capacity for uncertainties. Uncertainties like somebody got stuck, you have external dependencies, you have defects that you never, I mean, no developer plans for defects, so there are defects. Some tasks were not identified during sprint planning. All that is there, right? So you keep 20 to 30% for that, not more than that. If a team also gets unplanned work like production defects or enhancements, if they do get it every sprint, then you may reserve some capacity for those things. But here nothing is mentioned like that, so I'll assume that that kind of unplanned work is not coming here. I would like to see here that if a team is utilizing only 30 to 40% of the time, or they're planning for only 30 to 40% of their capacity, what are they working every day? What is the pace of development? What kind of collaboration is happening every day? Those are more important things. If people are playing safe, I would say the focus is more as on individual rather than focus being on achieving more as a team, right? So that motivation, encouragement, inspiration level is sort of missing here. And of course, retrospective is a good place where I would like to bring it to team's attention, show my concern, and ask them what are their thoughts, and maybe challenge them. Would you like to try for maybe 100 points this particular sprint or 120 points, right? There is some sort of resistance here to committing more because of maybe fear of failure, that if we commit 90 points, if we don't do 90 points, then how the management will see us, or just being comfortable that if we commit to 90, then we'll have to do 90 or 100 every time. If we can comfortably do 70, it's always easy, right? All right, let's move on to the next question. Or because it was a interesting case and people shared their thoughts, let me hear from other people if what I said, does it make sense, or do you have any follow-up question on the same case, this case? Hi, Only, do you have any further questions?
Pratibha and Navneet.
Okay,
Navneet, they raised their
Pratibha,
hand. Yeah, they raised their hand. Pratibha, can you type your question in chat window?
okay, so Monalisa is saying estimation velocity done on story point, capacity on effort. Yeah, this is exactly what's done, because when you're estimating the story points, you're roughly sizing the work items. It helps you figure out how much work will be done. You don't try to create a strong relationship between one story point equal to X number of hours or days. But when you're doing sprint planning, the focus is to do capacity planning for the team. So everybody has enough work and you pull work based on priority, right? So you don't create tight relationship, but there's an indirect relationship between story point and time, which is the velocity. Velocity tells you how many story points will be done in a sprint. So the relationship between story point and time is at the team level, not at the individual story level or at individual developer level. So Vamsi is asking question, do you recommend capacity based on planning all the time? No, I said 70 to 80%. So plan for 70 to 80%, keep 20 to 30% reserve for any uncertainties. If you expect more unplanned work in terms of production defects and enhancements, then you can reserve a little bit more. All right. So we'll move on to the next question. How to handle team conflicts and dysfunction within the team. And then this is asked with Tanmay. And there's another one which is Satish is asking is how to resolve team conflicts. So this is a standard topic in ICP-ACC. I'll show you one or two slides from the same presentation on conflicts. Yeah. So the first thing to understand on conflict is there are different levels of conflict. All, any two conflicts are not exactly the same. There are different levels of conflict. I'll quickly go through them. I usually take about half an hour or more to discuss this topic in ICP-ACC. I'll probably spend 5 minutes to 10 minutes on this one. The first level of conflict is problem to solve. This is a very logical conflict. The language is also very factual. One team member says, I think this can be done in this way, and the other team member says, no, I think this might be a better idea. So it's a logical discussion happening. People are sharing their thought process. It's not an argument. It might be a technical argument, but the emotions have not come into picture yet. And this is a healthy conflict. This is a conflict I would like to have in my team as a coach. If I don't see this kind of conflict, then I feel something is wrong. I feel people are avoiding conflict. So problem to solve, logical conflict, healthy conflict. The second level of conflict is disagreement. And this is the point where people's ego is coming into picture, their emotions are coming into picture, they're holding on to their positions. Usually between two people. The third level conflict is contest. Contest is when the conflict is gaining momentum, it is gaining strength, but it is still hidden. Imagine two people who are in conflict for a while, they are going around and gathering support for their position among team members. So groups may be beginning to emerge, but they are still behind the scenes. Level 4 conflict is crusade. This is a very visible open conflict. Either two people openly arguing a lot in front of the team. It could be product owner, scrum master, architect, any two people, or it could be two groups within the team, like developers and testers. Both the groups or both the people at this stage are trying to win against each other, and they're trying to win, really trying a lot to win against each other. At level 5, World War, the focus is not to win, the focus is to make the other person, other group lose face or lose badly, or they should be kicked out. That's the motivation of each group. It's a very nasty level conflict. Most conflicts, they go up and stabilize at level 4. That's what I've seen. In rare cases, the conflict may go to number 5 level. Now, that's the first thing as a coach you need to understand, that there are different levels of conflict. All conflicts are not the same. The second thing you have to understand as a coach is, as a manager, your focus may be to resolve the conflict as quickly as possible. But as a coach, your focus is to help the team, assist the team so they manage their own conflict. Your focus is to mature the team dynamics in such a way that team members, team themselves takes initiative to resolve their own conflicts. Right? Of course, it's easier said than done. So these are the details, rough details. I'll go through that. So in some cases, you will just do nothing as a coach. Now, doing nothing doesn't mean that it's a lazy choice. You are doing nothing. It's a conscious choice. And even though you're not doing anything, you are still watchful of what is going on. You are paying attention to what is going on. You are not taking your eyes off the conflict. And you would do that usually when the conflict is very fresh, or the conflict is low impact, it is personal, or maybe some third person is trying to negotiate between two people. Right? So you see some self-initiation, or maybe it's not a big concern yet. The second case is analyze and respond. This is the standard approach of a manager. You call the two people in a room, either one by one or at the same time, and you analyze the conflict and you resolve the conflict for the for the people in conflict. That's analyze and respond. It's the least preferred approach for the coach, because if you do that, you're making people dependent on yourself. That's number one. Second thing is, if you analyze and solve the conflict for them, they may not be happy. They may still be an undercurrent of conflict going on. On the face, they might say, okay, that's fine, but actually they may not be happy with the conflict resolution. Third is use structure, values, and principles. Or the other way I would say is to navigate around the conflict. So here you do not focus on the past, who did what happened. The key thing is, while you navigate around the conflict, let me write a few notes here. So one thing is you engage people in a meaningful conversation. You have to engage them. You are listening to their thought process, right? And when you engage them, you have to balance perspectives, right? And you will be doing a lot of listening, right? Balance their perspectives, and then you use structure, right? Use structure means if you have a conflict between, let's say, product owner and architect. Now, product owner is the person who is responsible for defining what needs to be done in what order. That's the responsibility of the product owner. Architect's responsibility is, along with the team, is more about how things need to be done. So he is sort of the leader for the team, deciding how things need to be done. So that's the structure part. So if the conflict is more about the approach, then team has a better say in terms of how it needs to be done. If the conflict about in what order things need to be done, then product owner needs to help the team see the value or understand his perspective about how in what order things need to be done. So use the structures, responsibilities, and values and principles of Agile. Let's take a case if a manager or maybe a senior person on the team, he or she is recommending something which is against Agile values, right? Agile values or principles, then you would not sort of favor that approach. So you step in as a coach into any conflict situation. You share your perspective from Agile standpoint. Right. So the key thing here is you are not analyzing and responding or resolving the conflict for them. The key thing is you're engaging them in a conversation. Uh, the the reason for this approach is if you engage them in a conversation, you make them think in the right direction, then they become more capable to solve these kind of situations on their own in future. That's the motivation. Moving on, how to be a good coach? It's a very vague question or broad question, and I would say the point I mentioned earlier, there are 5 areas of team capability, 5 dimensions. You help the team achieve those. And as a good coach, you are sometimes a teacher, sometimes a mentor, sometimes a team coach. You have to shift gears, but ultimately results will prove that you are a good coach or not. And there are 2 dimensions of those results. One is the productivity dimension, or performance dimension. The other is the team dynamics dimension. Yes, the team has to perform better, but the team dynamics also are very important. You should be able to improve the team dynamics. All right, we covered that already. Next is how can we coach mature Scrum team to motivate one level up? Uh, that's your primary role, right? As a coach, if you look at a teacher, the focus of a teacher is to impart knowledge, share knowledge. The focus of a mentor is to build new skills, help people develop new skills. The focus of a coach is, and it usually starts after the basic teaching and mentoring is done. The focus of a coach is to help people enhance their potential, keep improving. So, how can a coach do that? You have to be able to engage people in the right conversations, and that's where the motivation will sort of come into picture, right? Uh, there is a model called ADKAR model. I'll just share it here, right? This talks about how do you influence people, or what to focus, what approach to take to encourage people or influence people in the change journey. I'll quickly explain what ADKAR means. A is for awareness, D is for desire. So D, desire is very important, and it connects with this motivate part, right? Now you should be able to create desire in people, but they themselves have to have a need to improve, to do a good job. If somebody has no motivation to to improve their performance, they are totally detached from their work, right? It's difficult to motivate that person. So some level of motivation people need to have, and then you should be able to tune that motivation, refine that motivation, or improve on that motivation. So awareness, D is for desire, then K is for knowledge, then the next A is uh, ability, and the last is reinforcement, right? So that's the full form of ADKAR. You just search for Google for ADKAR, you'll find uh, good enough amount of documentation on that, right? So you can use that in coaching conversation. There's also a model called Grow model, but yeah, that's an ongoing job of a coach, how to motivate, and not just motivate, but also help them create action items, action plan to keep improving. The same thing works at individual level. The same thing works at a team level. And Scrum has a inbuilt mechanism. You have daily stand up where you can uh, keep reminding the team, right? What areas are you remind, or you ask them question where they realize that what needs to be taken care of. Or you have retrospective, which is an excellent platform where we practice continuous improvement as a team, right? So that's a standard platform. You don't need to pull people separately one by one. You can uh, trigger the process of continuous improvement if you are able to conduct an effective retrospective. Next is how to instill punctuality in your team without calling out. What could be different ways? So if you do not see punctuality, I'm assuming this is about a daily stand-up uh, without calling out. So you have to remind people. Now you have to say something, right? You have to do something about it. And it's perfectly fine if you remind people to be on time, whether it happens in front of the team, or if you see a persistent behavior where somebody is not on time, it's perfectly fine to have a one-on-one. Uh, just make sure the one-on-one is happening not like a manager, but more like a coach, where you share your observation that the person has been coming late, and you ask them about what is the challenge and how you can help. It's perfectly fine to have a one-on-one conversation about any dysfunction or behavior that you feel needs to be addressed. Uh, if multiple team members are showing this kind of lack of punctuality, then again, it's perfectly fine to bring it up in a team context, bring it up in a retrospective, and share your concern and ask people, what needs to be done. In some cases, in my experience, it has been as simple as having a money jar Whoever comes late pays $1 or 50 rupees, puts into that box, and you define, how late is late. Is it 1 minute late or 2 minutes is late? So team has to figure out a discipline, and you just facilitate that process. How to prioritize tasks when a product owner catering multiple stakeholders and product. All this served by a team. So this is a classic case, a standard case of multiple customer voices, where and that's product owner's job. He or she has to be able to talk to multiple stakeholders and create a single product backlog, right? Single product backlog, prioritize in order is an important thing. And how a product owner needs to do that, uh, he has to figure it out. Sometimes it will be calling them, these guys, all in a single room and asking them, how what priority needs to be there. Because keep in mind, each person, each stakeholder would like to get his or her things done first, but organization comes first before an individual. So ultimately, as a product owner, you need to be able to engage these guys together and figuring out about what matters the most to the organization. In some cases, if they are sponsoring the team, sort of, they're paying for the team internally, then depending on how much budget they allocate for this team, that decides how much work they can contribute or how many items they can give to the team. So it's difficult to give me a definite answer, but yeah, that's the job of product owner. Team should not get involved here. We have only 5 minutes left. I'll quickly go through some of these. How organization policy is to have a separate QA team. How to engage QA team to be effective, cohesive, one team and avoid small waterfall. So if you are having a separate QA team and doing Scrum, then development will happen in one sprint, one team sprint, and QA testing will happen in other team QA sprint. It is going to be some sort of waterfall. You cannot avoid. What you need to do here is ask the organization, what is more important, transitioning to Agile or following this policy? If they feel that this policy is more important, then let them know that you cannot effectively transition to Agile. There will be some sort of compromise, right? There will be delay in getting the feedback for QA. I've seen my teams which do that, one development team, one testing team, and work keeps going back and forth, ultimately leading to low productivity and lots of defects. There's a huge amount of waste in that approach. Next one, using the concept of Scrum of Kanban, how can it help to take decisions from a list of options available? So the key difference between both of them is Scrum uses sprint, Kanban uses continuous flow, right? You can use both for development projects. Of course, when the amount of change is more, Kanban is better suited because it's more adaptive. In Scrum, if the amount of change that comes during the sprint, it disrupts the team. Otherwise, both can be used for development projects. What all methods can be used in Agile coaching for creating metrics? For DevOps team, it doesn't matter if it's DevOps team or Agile team. The metrics will be driven by what I showed you earlier. Let me show that slide again. These 5 dimensions: productivity, business value delivery, quality, turnaround time, self-organizing culture. You're using DevOps, you're using something else. It should help you improve on these dimensions. Now we see DevOps more related to the turnaround time and maybe a little bit on the quality part. Many of the tools are more about automating things, so the quality becomes better. Also, the turnaround time becomes better. You are able to deploy at a faster pace. Again, any process, your metrics should be able to measure these things. It's difficult to measure the self-organizing culture. There you need to have some qualitative assessment, but other things you can have simple metrics. For productivity, the rough metric could be velocity. I would say for business value delivery, it will depend on how you are measuring business value delivery, right? Some teams may find it easy enough to find a dollar value or anticipated dollar value, but it may not be possible for all of the teams. For those teams, I would say just have a high, medium, low kind of categorization, which is again some sort of anticipated business value. On quality, there are different metrics in code quality. On turnaround time, release frequency, and cycle time, lead time related metrics will be useful. So we're coming close to the end of the session. We only 2 or 3 minutes left. Let me quickly see if any new question answer that we can probably address.
And if anything left, you can answer offline, and we will provide you to the participants who ask these questions.
Okay.
Because there are 7 Q&A questions which posted recently, means during this webinar session.
Yeah, the other thing is this is the first webinar we have conducted. The request has been coming for the past 6 months during my ICP-ACC program. But I think it might be a good idea to conduct these every month or so. We'll try to do it. We'll have another one session in the middle of next month, March. And if the interest is good enough, we'll continue having them. Yeah.
Great. So we have poll results which I couldn't share, and the second poll is also there. So
yes, thanks for reminding me about that. Yeah, please go ahead.
So this is a result of first poll. Actually, it was supposed to share during start.
Yeah. Seema, I already shared that.
You have to share? Okay, so
yes.
I am stopping it. And the second poll I'm launching. Yes. So I request you all to vote. Bar is moving, means they are still voting.
Okay. So initially we are expecting all the participants who would have already done ICP-ACC. Then we saw that many had not done or not replied to that question. So we put this question. Good. So 60%. Should we close it, Seema?
Yeah. So friends, it was insightful Q&A session, and whatever questions left, we will try to answer them offline. And as Sanjay said, that we will conduct this session frequently if we get response. And I'm also glad to share that apart from ICP-ACC, we have other IC Agile programs like Business Agility, which we are going to launch during this month. And the first session is going to happen on 21st and 22nd of February. And also, we are planning to conduct these sessions virtually. So if you have any query, you can write to sales@igenbridge.com. Apart from business agility, we have other program, APM, which is the Agile project, which is in the Agile project management. And we are doing this session virtually. So in case you are interested in doing APM or business agility program, you can write to sales@igenbridge.com. Thanks for attending this session. And in case you have any question which is left to answer, please write to us. We will answer you. Thank you. Thanks for attending.
Seema, could you please share the sales email on chat?
Yeah, I'm sharing.
Thank you very much, Sanjay, for taking out time for this wonderful, insightful session. So hopefully we'll conduct the next somewhere in the month of March.
Yes, we'll try to do it in the middle of the week like this one, Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah, sometime in the middle of March would be perfect. Yeah.
Cool.
And we'll see some of the questions, if they're interesting enough, we'll probably take it from here and and answer in the next
Yeah,
session.
yeah. So definitely, I'll keep in touch with all the participants of this webinar, and I'll share all the questions with you. So hopefully, guys, you'll all get all of answers of your questions. So keep posting me. I am Kumkum. Hope you all received email from me only. So just keep posting your questions.
All right, bye guys.
Cool. Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Seema.
Thank you, Kumkum.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, all guys. Bye.